So a couple things I want to think about with my camera this week. When I am using it, I'm actually probably most likely going to use that shutter priority mode myself. For me, it's TV. One thing again, I've noticed for my camera, I can change that ISO to auto, and my pictures usually, they're okay most of the time. Um, I've noticed that sometimes, especially on my Nikons, that ISO auto doesn't always seem to want to work quite as well. So if you're using this mode and that is becoming a problem for you, you shouldn't have to worry about adjusting aperture because we're not in manual mode yet with this particular camera. But go ahead and play with that ISO. And I usually start, you'll have to take a picture and kind of evaluate. I would say anywhere from 1/60th of a second up to 100th of a second for something in motion. Again, if the picture is still coming out blurry, then I'd up the shutter speed. So it just kind of depends on what you're talking about. ISO, again, change it to auto. If it's a bright sunny day outside, I would start at 100 because, again, the more light you have, the less sensitive your camera needs to be to that light. Now, that being said, if it's a longer shutter speed, so say you put it up for like a 2-second exposure, I'm not sure in this project if you would actually do that, but if you did, that is an example of something that I would have to change the ISO if it was a bright sunny day outside because I'd be getting too much light if my shutter was open for 2 seconds. So it gets a little bit better the more you do it. So if you are having issues with that, let me know and I'll try and help. I know that sometimes I want to reach through the computer screen, but it doesn't always work. Well, that has never worked for me, but I'll let you know if it does. Of course, there are other settings that you can please feel free to explore. So the other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't already know about it, is that continuous shutter. So on my screen, mine is going to look a little bit different. In that Nikon, it's going to probably be under your settings menu. So I'm going to go ahead and you can see at the very bottom, it says single shooting. And I'm going to select that single shooting. This is my drive mode. If I click over to the right, this is continuous shooting, meaning that when I go to hold my shutter down, on single shooting, it only takes one picture. On continuous shooting, it just keeps taking pictures over and over again until I take my hand or my finger off that shutter button. So if I'm taking a picture in here, I'll put it in light mode. I'm still in sepia, so you have to check those last camera settings that you used last. But you can hear it. Every click was a picture. So until I released my finger off of that button, I just held it down and it took probably a good 15 pictures of the exact same thing for here. Well, it's great if it's in motion because then you don't have to literally keep pressing the button over and over and over again. You just hold that continuous button down and you continuous shutter button down and it keeps taking pictures for you. It only stops when you take your finger off the shutter button. If you do have, oh gosh, I gotta do some erasing now, right? Let me get back to that screen. If for some reason, and I have one, I don't have an example, but if you have a remote self-timer, a remote control, you can set that up under this screen here. Again, it's probably under your main settings bar if it's a Nikon. But this would let me use a remote and set up a timer. And then this also, again, is a self-timer mode. So if I know, like those lovely family pictures where you don't have anyone to take them for you and you put it on self-timer, you can do that under this mode. So continuous shooting is really useful for animals, in conclusion.